Welcome back to I Came with Fire podcast, everybody. Tonight we are here with Vince Vargas. Going to discuss his new book that comes out on the 14th of November, Borderline, and some other things. Whatever we end up talking about. There it is. Oh,
Hey,
we got it too.
you
We
beat
actually
me
have the
to it.
advanced read. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's right. We have the advanced reader copy. He's got the real one there. That's right. Yeah. I just saw that you put out the ability to get a signed copy of it too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they sent us these these little stickers to put on it, but we had to partner with an actual book company who was going to purchase the books beforehand and then stick them on there. And so just driving traffic to them because it's the only place you'll get signed ones at the moment.
Okay.
Some people are setting up some book signing like meet and greets, but you can't get a signed one unless you run into me personally or you buy them there.
Got you. Yeah, we put the link up on our page earlier today, so anybody listening, if you want one, by the time this comes out, you'll still have time to pre-order. So please pre-order. So, but yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. I've checked out some of the other stuff that you have done with, I listened to your episode with Rocco. That's awesome. I saw the picture you guys put up, and in the comments said there's got to be 5 miles of chin in that picture, and I died when I saw that. It cracked me up.
Yeah, man, it's funny. I have a son with the same chin, and
yeah,
I feel bad for him because I give him all the chin jokes that they ever gave me.
Prepping him for later. That's good. Yeah. That's what a dad's supposed to do. Perfect.
Like the Crimson Chin from Fairly Odd Parents or something.
Oh,
do you get that joke?
Right.
Yeah, tons of
it. The list goes on.
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Can it take a hit? Is it durable? Is it strong?
I bet it can, man.
I mean, I've never been knocked out in a boxing match, so I feel pretty good.
There we go.
That's good stuff. See? Hell yeah. So let's jump in, man. Where were you born? What was it like where you grew up?
I was born
backstory.
I was born in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles, California.
Okay.
Born in Northridge at the Northridge Hospital at the Kaiser.
Okay. What room?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What time?
Fourth floor. Good to know.
I grew up in the born in 81, but was raised in the 90s, early 90s, where gangs were pretty prevalent in LA. And, I was very fortunate to have a father who did his little stint in gangs and then kind of he got in trouble and it was either go to the military or go to jail. And, he chose the military and it kind of changed his path. And he did everything he could to keep me off that same path. Because by the time I was younger, it just turned into gangs was different. It turned into gang banging, right? A lot of people getting shot, killed. And so he put me in sports pretty heavily. And so I played sports since I was very young. I played baseball since I was 4. And I was just very committed to sports my whole life then. And I think that was the fortunate thing. It kept me away from a lot of the trouble that some of my buddies I grew up with got into. So that's really my upbringing.
That seems to be the thing. Sports are gangs, and I talk to a lot of people that grew up inner city stuff like that. And I'll never knock anybody that grew up playing sports. I did, and it's something that I hear a lot of people kind of put down. Growing, you just played sports, you got a scholarship playing sports. Whatever. It's you have no idea how often that keeps kids occupied and off the streets.
Mm-hmm.
So sports is a W all day.
Yeah, and it's more than that too, right? How much did you learn from sports? I learned how to win, and I learned how to lose. I learned physical fitness. I learned how to be a leader. I learned you learn how to be a team player, camaraderie. The reason the military felt so comfortable is because all those years in a clubhouse with baseball players and my brothers and knowing how to be a part of a team, knowing how to blend in, knowing how to know what you're good at, and that's what you bring to the team, right? Your talent. And so I think it's such an important skill set to give your kids some kind of competitive nature as a kid. I think life is competitive. I think when you're in the field of looking for a woman, it's competitive. You're competing against other men. If you're, it's life is nothing but, to me, it's like a competition, not so much a competition against other people, but sometimes it's a competition between ourselves, within ourselves. And so I think sports, I give my kids sports that they all have to play some kind of a sport in our household. I don't care what it is, but there's some kind of activity that's an extracurricular. And we've watched them all go through it, struggle and hardship. And it's kind of fun to watch, at the same time be there to kind of pick them up when they're down.
Heck yeah. Yeah, no, you're speaking to some real existential truths there, man. Like growing up or coming up as human beings, that's what it is. Survival of the fittest. You know, if we got here because of all our ancestors that were willing to pick up a spear and fight a saber-toothed tiger, and the ones that didn't aren't here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So,
They're
and then
sitting
that
inside the
inner
food.
struggle, like you said, like yeah, you poop on the ground afterwards, and I mean, it teaches you to deal with those inner struggles, absolutely, like you said. And it's definitely a great way. I actually had this conversation with a really good senior NCO. Him and I are pretty good friends. We're talking about, you can tell the difference between the kids that played sports before they came into the military and the kids that didn't, or like the kids that had jobs, before they came in. And that's exactly what he was getting at, is the ones that don't understand how to be a team player. And that means like being a leader and a follower, because those are two different things and they both require a different line of effort.
Yeah.
And it's so true. It must, to me, it says like your dad and your mom probably had a lot of that in them and kind of raised you that way.
Yeah, I'll tell you, like, in all honesty, my parents weren't much of like mentors, but they were examples of what they expected us to be. And meaning, I didn't have these long, deep talks with my father that I try and have with my sons now. He was just a man of what he did, proved himself to be exactly the man of his word. He was a hard worker.
Mm-hmm.
He was a family man. Everything he did was for us, and everyone who ever met him was like, "Your dad's a good man." And so I think, like I said, he just lived by example, and it was enough to influence me to try and be the same, if not try and make him proud in the same effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel you there, because a lot of the deep conversations I've had with my father have definitely come as I've been an adult and after I've had children. And it's no fault of his. Like, he was deployed a lot. GWAT had him going all the time, or he was at work late. He's an intel guy, and so just he wanted to. I know he did, and we did a lot together. Played a lot of sports. I was always in sports, but those deep conversations definitely have had since I've become an adult. But I know that Zach actually is pretty damn close with his dad. So
I am, yeah, I'm very close to my dad. He wasn't much of a talker either when growing up, but I don't know, I wasn't much of a talker either, even though I'm on a podcast, which doesn't make any sense. But
you're there for the aesthetics.
Yeah, I'm just here to look pretty for the camera.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, my dad's like my best friend. I could go to him about anything. Him and I would just have like adult conversations from the time I can remember as a kid. He never really, like, I guess, like babied anything, but I think it's important to have a dad. And dads are very important to culture. And I think a lot of some of the issues with current generation coming up and stuff is the lack of an actual strong father figure, or a founding father type in their family.
Absolutely.
So I'm very lucky to have a dad who grounded me, kind of made my craziness not get too out there, because I know what's inside my brain. And if there wasn't a dad to discipline me and to keep me on the right path, I'd be crazy. I know I'd be crazy.
Yeah. No, I get it, man. Yeah, I agree. I think dads are pretty important in a household. It's kind of that balance. If you have a mother and a father, you're very fortunate, because the balance of the nurture and the disciplinary. It's kind of in our house, it's like that. The kids have the opportunity to have both sides of it. But me as a father, I'm learning and growing as a dad to try and be really good for them, as well as society wants me to kind of not be as masculine. And I fight with that, as in, like, I don't want to be the guy that says he knows it all, but I want to raise my son to be a tough man who is willing to defend people who are weaker than him, in the ideology of just kind of who we are as Americans, right? But if you're trained, then you should use it for good and not evil. And and then you tell that to someone else, they'd be like, "Oh, you're a monster. You're raising your kids to know how to fight." It's like, yeah, but
I'm teaching them how to defend.
Right? Defend, exactly, and protect. And there's not a lot of people who are willing to engage. And my kids, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to see it, were raised under my roof, who I raised them to learn how to defend themselves at a very young age.
That's good. What you said makes me think of the Jordan Peterson line where he says you should become a monster and then learn how to control it. And I think that's exactly the truth. And
I think that's a lot of guys who are highly trained. That's exactly what they are, right? Like, when you need it.
That's true. Yeah. You're talking about, raising strong men, Zach. And I think just, in general, being a good parent to both, your sons and daughters is important. But I think there's been, over the past couple decades, a coddling of American youth, primarily American male youth. And I think it's pretty prevalent. You can see it a lot online. If you spend a lot of time online, you see kind of the effeminate male has made his presence known.
Well, I think coddling's a cop-out word. In my mind, they're purposely holding men back.
Yeah,
they're not coddling them. They're not like, oh, let me help you. They're purposely making them think they need more help and then holding them back.
Mm-hmm. I think there's both, but
yeah. I think it's funny. I think as society learns all these studies, and they're like, well, they're trying to do right by men who have emotions and what are all that stuff, right? But sometimes it seems like they've overcalculated it on the scientific side of things. Yeah. And so then people are trying to, they want to be better parents, but they're not realizing the ripple effect of that. And, I accidentally raised really tough girls because, I taught them how to wrestle at a very young age. And I made them read books where women were the lead character in the books to show them that women can do anything they fucking want, right? And
that's awesome.
And I have daughters who are very tough and tough-minded, but in the same aspect, I'm hoping my sons are too. And so when I think about who my daughters date, I'm like, I imagine they want someone who can defend them, even though they can defend themselves. And I imagine, they don't want to be the one to change their tire if they need to, that hopefully their man will, you know what I mean? And so, so it's this really kind of interesting time where, yes, people are wanting men to be softer, not so this toxic masculinity conversation is just kind of gets old. But in the end of the day, everybody is going to need someone to defend them. And, as much as women are women, men are men, I think, I, in my household, choose to raise my kids in the way to, my son will protect his sisters and he will die on his shield if he has to do that, and if he can't do it, then my daughters will at least go down swinging too. You know what I mean? And so, and instead of influencing the world on anyone's opinion, just keep it within your own fucking household and raise your family the way you want to raise your own fucking family, but don't try and judge me for how I do mine.
I like what you said about how you you raised a strong daughter. So Brandon has kids currently. He's got a son and a daughter. Obviously, you have kids. You just talked about them. But my wife is pregnant now, and this is gonna be our first kid. So we're about to have my first daughter. She's at the end of January, and I've always thought of how would I want to raise her, all this type of stuff. And I think I want to kind of go down the same line you just kind of discussed. I want to make sure that my daughter is strong and independent and can do things on her own and have that empowerment kind of with her and stuff. But then I also want to show her that like the love that I give her, and I want her to see how I treat her mom, very nurtured, very cared for, type of stuff, so that when she is getting older and she starts looking for her, spouse or mate or whatever, she's looking for someone, because they do say that usually daughters look for their dad and sons look for their mom, because they're looking for those type of things. Yeah. And I hope that I can be a strong, nurturing father that would emulate well with my daughter, so she can find the right one.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's interesting. It's kind of like, so if there's like a dial, and back in the day, my dad didn't teach my daughters, my sisters to be tough. He just taught them to be like the women of the household, and so, the dial was pushed more towards like traditional kind of women, cook and clean. And in my household, I turned the dial like, well, no, you should defend yourself too. So the problem is when you turn the dial that far, well, then they go, well, I don't need a man. And you're like, wait.
Right, yeah. Let's find that balance.
Yeah, finding the balance and letting them know, look, just because you can't defend yourself and you are independent doesn't mean you need to be, right? You should be a kind of like you should find the balance in your relationship where you guys can find homeostasis in your own, but knowing that in the worst case type of event in life alone, you can still be successful, but I'm always fearful of them pushing too far the dial, and they're like, you know what, fuck, man, I don't need them. And no, that's not what I'm like.
Right.
I want kids. I mean, I want you to be.
Yeah. I want to pay for your wedding one day.
No.
Yeah, right.
No
it's so
dating
true.
until after you're married.
Exactly. And it's so funny. You said, you don't need a man and you shouldn't be in that spot. It's so true. That's the key to a successful relationship is being able to be okay with yourself, but wanting that person in your life.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? If you'll both be that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's kind of cool. You were talking earlier about listening to people talk about your dad, and we've had a few people on our podcast who we've talked to who work with my dad, and I've learned a lot about him from some of those people too. And it's kind of interesting hearing somebody else's, like a peer's perspective of your father, because it can definitely mold how you look at that like your dad, and it's definitely done that for me. So I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I follow my dad around in the boxing world, and I go to his fights as he does his thing. And I mean, it's like everyone comes up to me and goes, "Your dad's like a great guy," and you're like, "Oh, it's cool to hear,
Right.
man." You know what I mean? That's cool. And I hope my kids get the same message from my friends about me. You know what I mean? But it's one of those things that's kind of where, my dad didn't have to say much; just his presence and his actions kind of proven to me what kind of man he is.
Definitely. So tell me about like why it was you decided to join the Army, and why you decided to go the route of the Ranger.
Yeah. At the time I had a full ride scholarship to a school in Kentucky called Brescia University. And I was trying to continue my career as a baseball player and hopefully go as professional. That was the dream.
Okay.
But during that time, a lot of things happened in my life. I was getting in trouble a lot with drinking and fighting. I was getting, and I had a daughter who, I got a girl pregnant back home, and I'm struggling with my grades. And so it felt like kind of my world was kind of coming apart. And this was in 2000. It was like late 2002. No, it was early 2003 where I found out I was academically ineligible and I lost my full ride scholarship. And I'm sitting in a small town in Kentucky. And, and I'm trying to figure out, well, what the fuck's next? I'm getting kicked out of my college.
Culture shock.
Yeah. I got kicked out of my college. I had to go find a little apartment. I didn't want to go back home yet because that's failure, right? How do I tell my parents I just fucked up? I had a daughter back there with a girl at the time I didn't want anything to do with. And so like there was nothing going good in my life. And so I got a job at a Texas Roadhouse and I was just trying to figure it out. I gave myself like 6 months to try and like, what's next? I tried to go to a police academy, but I would have had to pay out of state tuition. Didn't have the money to do it. And so all the things that I was trying to do, it just proved to be too difficult, or I just didn't understand it, or I just didn't want to give it the full effort. And I was at a bar. I got off shift at Texas Roadhouse, and I walked over to the Buffalo Wild Wings. And it's one of those cities where everyone knows who you are. So as soon as I walk in, the bartender, his name's Jared. He goes, "Hey, dude, the usual." I'm like, "Yeah, bro, the usual." And at the time, I had a little spot. Yeah, you know what I mean? I had a spot at the bar. Me and my boy, we sat down, and we're playing this trivia game and watching sports. And on one of the TVs, I saw like a news report, like CNN or Fox or something, where the Marine was putting the American flag over the statue of Saddam Hussein's head. Remember that whole thing?
Yes.
And we've all seen it, right?
Yeah,
and they pulled the statue down. And so the Marine who put the flag over the head of the statue, his family was in studio and they were interviewing them, and they're proud of him, and they had tears in their eyes, and they were just talking so high about their son and how proud they were. And in that moment, I felt, I don't know if I've ever given my family a moment like that. I don't think I've ever made them that proud. And what I'm doing now, sitting at a bar, lost a full ride, have a baby on the way, and shit, got nothing to show for it. I know for a fact they're not fucking proud of me now too, And so I was going to have to face reality and start fixing a lot of this shit that I just put myself into. And that night when I saw that, I realized like, what can fulfill all those issues? What can kind of make my family proud? What can put money in my pocket so I can support my daughter? And what could be the next mission for me? You know what I mean? And so I went to the recruiter the next day and signed up, and I asked for what's the hardest thing you have, because I wanted to face a challenge. I wanted to see what was out there. And so they said the Ranger contract is what I could get based on my GT scores on my ASVAB. Awesome. So I went for the option 40 contract, and there you have it. That was it.
So I'm Air Force. I'm not as cool as you in the Army.
You're smarter than
yeah, sure. We'll go there.
Army is an acronym. Army is an acronym.
What
stands for Air Force rejected me yesterday. So
Okay. I thought it was aren't ready to be a Marine yet, is what I've heard somebody say that one
They
too.
both
Yeah.
work.
I've heard them
Okay.
all.
Either way, chair force, sure, yeah. But
every jet's got a chair.
it does. That's true. What is Army basic training? You guys go to a couple different places. I know that, like, because you're whatever based on your MLS, do you go with others who are going down that like Ranger pipeline, or are you just like in there with guys that are going to be like Motor T and like all this other stuff?
No, so if you're infantry, you go to basic training at Fort Benning, and so
Okay.
So if you're infantry, you go to basic training at Fort Benning, hands down. If you're active duty infantry, that's what you do. And so it's the home of the infantry, right? And so if you have a Ranger contract as well, you'll be there too. If you're infantry, like 11 Bravo, with a Ranger contract, you're going to be at Fort Benning. Now, we had in my platoon, if there were 60 kids in the platoon, there was probably 45 kids in the platoon. We had about 30 Ranger contracts.
Okay.
So I didn't know that either. I just thought, I was like, oh, cool, I got a Ranger contract, and I thought I was going to be the only one. I actually learned a lot about what I was going to get myself into from the guys that were in basic training with me. They, like, some of those guys were well, they knew exactly what was happening. I had no fucking clue. And I was like, so I said, what's this RIP thing? And they're like, oh, it's a selection. I'm like, what the fuck you mean a selection? Like, well, they're going to kick our fucking ass. I'm like, oh, fuck. And so I started like,
this was it.
Yeah, do I even want this? Like, I don't even know if I fucking want this thing. And then you find out, Rangers, the perks of it is like you're surrounded by other men who want to be in that world, right? So the top echelon of dudes who are just ready to go to war. I'm like, okay, that makes me feel a little bit better that everyone's going to be wanting to do what I do, right? The other side of it was like shorter deployments, and so I kept thinking like that'd be better for my kid, that I could be in her life a little bit more, and so really that drove me to like, okay, let's just do this Ranger thing. It gives me more time to be with the family, which proved to be a fucking lie.
Right. It always is.
Yeah, but so you went to basic training, and everyone was 11 Bravo. It was just some had Ranger contracts, some didn't. Some had 18 X-ray contracts, Special Forces contracts. There was a couple of that guys that had, and there were some that were just like 11 Charlie and regular infantry. Several of my dudes went to Vincenza and served out there. So
it's funny you say you learned a lot about it when you're at basic training. When I was at basic, so my dad was active duty, and so like when I went to the recruiter, the only thought I had in my head was active duty. And I get to basic, and almost like 2/3 of my flight, we call them flights, are guard or reserve. And I start talking to them, and they're like, "Oh, did you have a bonus in your contract?" And I was like, "Well, I do if I finish tech school." And they're like, "Oh shit, I'm getting 30 grand just for finishing basic." And I'm like, "What?" And they're like, what fucking job are you doing? And they're like, oh, like I'm going to go back to my guard unit and I'm going to be a loadmaster. And I just, it's because my guard unit. And I had no idea, like all these guys that were going guard or reserve got these crazy, like incentivized contracts just for joining. They were going to, they'd already been like working at their, their guard base and all this shit. And
yeah,
I was
but
like,
their bonuses though cover because they're not paid full time. Like I was
still though, like I had no idea,
I was a recruiter, and our guard counter and reserve counterpart. If you actually like sit down and you take like a guard or reservist who's going to do, because they have to sign a 6-year no matter what. So they sign like a 6-year, they get their like 30K, 40K bonus. If you take their part-time work the whole time and then their bonus, they make like 1/3 the amount that an active duty member makes in the same time. Mm-hmm. So like they still make significantly less, and then their healthcare isn't like free. Like I know ours, it costs like $20 or $30 a month or something. Theirs is like $250 a month, but they only get paid like $350 a month, so they actually only get paid like $100. So like it's not all what it's chalked up to be.
Okay, Zach.
I'm just saying.
Right.
All those people that got their 30K.
I know exactly. Thank you, computer. Yeah, exactly. So, what was it like for you finally like making your way? Like, what is RIP like? Obviously, I've never been through it, and then finally getting to your first duty station.
Yeah, I think RIP at the time was like a little bit more than 2 weeks, but not so much 3 weeks. And really, it's just a big suck fest, like a PT suck fest. It's like a PT test, and eventually there's a 5-mile run, and then there's like a long ass road march, and then there's a thing called Coal Range, which it's very famous. Coal Range is like is like where people show up and fucking quit. Like that's the place where you get the biggest dropout. And it happens to be where you do land navigation courses as well as like smoke sessions all night. You're just getting fucking dusted off all night. And then, when you graduate from that, or when you pass that, you pass by finishing another long ass fucking road march. And it's just a suck fest. They don't feed you much. They don't let you sleep much. They kick your ass physically. And, it's a test of intestinal fortitude. And, I had no idea whether I was going to be able to manage it or not. I've never been through anything fucking tough. Like, baseball was easy, and fucking football was just hell weeks. And so when I got through it, I was kind of surprised. Like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. You know what I mean? It sucked, but it wasn't terrible.
That's good.
The worst was now I had to go to Ranger Battalion, and Ranger Battalion as a private, if you don't have a Ranger tab, it's fucking hell there. So that became the next like big hurdle.
Made you earn your keep, huh?
Oh yeah. Even though it's funny, I was kind of an older soldier, you know what I mean? There was a few of us that were 23, 24, and most of the young dudes coming there were 18 years old. And so those 18-year-old kids who've never done shit in their life are fucking dumbasses. They're genuinely like just green, bro. They don't know shit. But I'm over here, had a kid. I've done, 3 years of college, and I've had some full-time. I've done I've just lived a little. And so getting into Ranger Battalion, I didn't want to go through that fucking new guy phase, but you definitely have to get put through the ringer for a little while. Once I got my first deployment, I started to earn a little bit of respect. But again, you really don't get treated good until you get your Ranger tab. So after my second deployment, I went to Ranger School, got my Ranger tab, then went to my third deployment, and eventually it was like my time was up. In my 4 years, I decided to get out.
Gotcha. What year was that first deployment? What was that like for you?
2004 was in Afghanistan. It was interesting, man. I didn't know what to expect. I was kind of curious what it was going to be like. I seen Black Hawk Down, so I'm imagining the worst fucking case scenario, right?
Sure.
But it was definitely a culture shock of showing up to Afghanistan and understanding that environment, and the way we did missions back then was really kind of like walking walking 8 clicks to an objective and hitting a house, and these people who haven't seen a chem light in their whole life, and you crack one of those chem lights, they fucking feel like you just did magic, and so it's the infantrymen doing war is one side of me, then the other side of just kind of like observing it all and like being very empathetic to it, and like what a fucking weird experience this was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then and so I was fortunate. We didn't have a lot of action our first deployment, or for my first deployment, it was the first deployment after Tillman was killed, and so
at Tillman.
Yep. So it was a lot of interesting tension in the platoon, as well as the company during that time. And so we got in there, we did our missions, and we got out. And I was told I was going to go to Ranger School, but then also they mentioned that our next deployment was going to be Iraq. And so I opted to skip Ranger School and go to Iraq. And that was my most eventful deployment. We had a ton of missions. We had a lot of contact. We had a lot of Purple Hearts earned. And man, that was a hell of an experience. It was my favorite by far deployment that I'm super proud of as a platoon, and what we did, the work we did out there. We had guys who get injured, but we didn't lose anyone in that deployment, which is very, very fortunate. Yeah. And I was excited to be a Ranger. I was proud to be a part of this organization that has such a heavy, heavy history, and to be able to, kick in doors with some of the best dudes in the world. After that deployment, we went back, and that's when I went to Ranger School. And during that time in Ranger School, the platoon deployed again to Iraq, but this time to Ramadi. My deployment was in Mosul, and so they went to Ramadi in 2006, and that's when we ended up losing 2 guys, and I wasn't there. So that was a big hit for me. That psychologically, and emotionally, I lost 2 of the most influential dudes in my career. I was fortunate.
Survivor's guilt.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, if you guys have followed me at all, you've probably seen the video I did with Matt, and we talked about them. If you haven't seen it, it's out there somewhere. But
I've heard you talk about it.
Yeah. Sergeant Barraza and Sergeant Brim. Sergeant Barraza for me was someone I looked up to heavily, someone who I wanted to emulate, someone who I think is a better man than I will ever be, and I've always wished I could trade places with him, And so, after losing him, it really made me question whether I wanted to keep going or if I wanted to get out and try something different. And so when going into my last deployment, I was really like, fuck, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And so, we did all our missions, and the whole time I'm like, hope this is the last one. I'm ready to go home. Because I know they were killed on one of the last missions of that deployment, so that's in my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just got to get out of here.
Yeah, and so I'm like, everyone is like, dude, if it could have happened to them, it fucked me up, And so when that last mission happened and we redeployed back home, I was like, all right, fuck this, I'm out, And so I got off of active duty and decided to go into the reserves.
Okay.
But I safeguarded my own career field. I wanted to get established in the States, so I wanted to find a job that was non-deployable for a while. Okay. So it was going to be like, I didn't know what I was going to do, recruiter or something, but I found a drill sergeant position. I found a drill sergeant position.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I became an Army, reserve drill sergeant. And during the time of that, I, applied for a bunch of jobs and landed one as a prison guard. My first job out of the. Yeah. It's actually my second job. The first job I had was a sales for a company called Cintas. But I did it for
yeah. What was that?
Yeah, what'd you sell?
Cintas. Sounds weird.
Yes, it's called Cintas. It's Cintas. I don't even know. Essentially, what they did was, I was in the medical department, so I was selling medical supplies to corporations. Essentially, like everyone has
catheters.
Yeah, exactly, shit like that.
Yeah.
AEDs and shit. And so I did it for like 45 days, and I was like, fuck this job. But it was the first job out the chute that I can get paid. And I was applying for everything else after that. And I landed a job as a corrections officer for a private prison.
Okay. Gotcha. Earlier when you were talking about your first deployment, you were talking about like the human side of you, seeing the people and the way they live. Like that, Zach and I actually met deployed to Kenya. And we actually had a lot of communication with the locals outside of the camp we were at. And it's wild looking, I had my daughter at the time. I didn't have my son yet. And I'm looking at these little girls, and they're getting these, like, we're bringing these like USO care packages out to them. They have these little barrettes and stuff like that they can put in their hair. And these things probably cost somebody like 2 cents to make. And it was like really Christmas for these little girls, and their huts are literally made of sticks and mud, and there's black mambas and puff adders and shit all over the place, and
baboons.
There's Al-Shabaab down the road, and it's like, to me, it was just like, it changed me a little bit just to feel, I already knew like how lucky I was to be an American, but to see that, like, if there was a nail to drive home about it, like that was really it for me. Is that kind of like the same experience that you're talking about, like seeing people in another country live?
Yeah, man. I don't know where it comes from, but I mean, even when I was a kid and we used to go to Mexico, my mom would give me $20 to go spend on something, and I'd see a little kid selling chiclets, and I'd give him the whole $20 for one fucking pack of chiclets because I just felt bad for the motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, I've always been very empathetic of my surroundings and people's, situations. I've always been very fortunate. We didn't have the biggest house growing up. We didn't have a lot of money, but at the same time, when we did, I was like, oh, okay, cool, we're doing all right. But I always felt empathetic towards other people. And so in the military, I never expected I would feel that because I thought it was going to be just like survival mode and just get through it. But there was moments where you're like, God damn, this is crazy as fuck. You know what I mean? And I've never let that go. Like when you get a chance to read the book, that's probably why a lot of people, when they've read the book, they've been like, I didn't expect that side of you, because I talk a lot about that that hasn't stopped, meaning like the way I'm empathetic towards people and towards situations is why I was kind of compelled to write the book, because the same reason is very empathetic towards what's happening on the border on both sides of the argument, from illegal immigration as well as to the border patrol just working the game. So Yeah, and it's the same being a prison guard, bro. I'm sitting there, and there's some people that I don't fucking give two shits about in prison because they've done things that I find to be unforgivable. But there's some people in
Right.
there, you're like, holy fuck, bro, I could be on the other side of this motherfucker just like this dude. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
so, yeah.
that's something I tell a lot of these, like the junior airmen coming up, is like, you think that you're better than somebody else you see getting in trouble right now, but like, I know you fuck around too. And the difference between you and them is that they got caught and you haven't yet. So, let's act with a little humility. You know what I mean? So, um, fortunately, Zach and I actually have read your book because we were sent the advanced reader copies. So yeah. So we can talk to it for sure. And is honestly is a really good book. I told my dad, that I was reading it, and when we were asked if we wanted to get the advanced reader copy and all that stuff a couple of months ago, I saw read the, I don't know what they call it, the little thing they send you about like the book and you, and I was like, oh fuck yeah, I want to talk to this guy. Like, this sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And the border crisis obviously is something that a lot of people talk about. And I'm like you, I feel like I have a lot of empathy for other people. I grew up overseas. My dad was stationed in Japan, Germany, and England. I moved around all the time. I got to visit all these other countries, see how people live. And I think that that's helped me have a different perspective on like just us as Americans. And then obviously joining the military myself, I've definitely developed a different perspective. And but reading your book definitely more so just helped me humanize like you guys as border patrol agents. And it's got to be incredibly frustrating because border patrol is a federal agency, and like I just watched a video the other day of like some bulldozers pushing down fence line in Texas that the state of Texas put up, but the federal government is pushing them down. And I know that like the support from like at least the current presidential regime and the other people like is pretty null and void. So like I feel like that's got to be just a mental beatdown for you guys, man.
Yeah, it's an interesting argument and discussion because like Texas is so fascinating because right, Border Patrol's federal, but the state of Texas is state. And so you have federal law going against state law, and they both have good intentions, but both take different actions towards the illegal immigration.
Right.
Texas is Texas. I live in Texas, right? Texas wants to secure their borders, and they're willing to do whatever they have to secure that border. But the problem is, as I love Texas, man, I will not hate on Texas at all, and I get it. But to understand how to do this job as Border Patrol agents, we are taught to do this job with the thought of the empathy behind illegal immigration. Like, I understand why people are coming across. I understand there's two parts of this. There's always two parts of the argument happening at every time. There's going to be illegal immigration or immigration policy, and the other side is going to be homeland security. So I have to somehow, in the duality of that, I had to somehow enforce the security of our country and protect Americans. But I also have to understand, like, illegal immigration. There's a foundation of that is people being manipulated, people being trafficked, people being, fooled into doing the illegal process because that's the path that everyone has told them is the only way to go.
Right.
So the duality of that is challenging, and us as Border Patrol agents see things in a way where it's a humanitarian mission half the time. And
right.
I would much rather them do it the legal way, the safer way, where they don't risk their life, where they don't risk being raped, murdered, abused, all those things that happen. I would much rather them do it the legal way, but that's not the situation we have. And so the situation we have is that we still have to be humans in how we apprehend them and how we safeguard human life. And when you start putting, an abundance of razor wire to try and stop it, it doesn't make sense when you do that and it starts to harm women and children who are just trying to come here and have a better life. It just, the opposite of that, you have both sides of the argument that are saying, yeah, that's awesome. And then the other side's like, no, it's not. And for me, it's the hardest, most complex argument we have currently in our society.
Is a constant dichotomy, I gotta feel like, for you guys, because as a patriot, as somebody who served your country and then wanting to help people and seeing this every day has to just be like a constant state of confusion. And that's a question I wanted to ask you is, how do we posture up and keep the border more secure, but at the same time still help that fleeing mother with children who's just trying to get a better life?
Yeah, the policy is currently in place. It's called, it's USC, it's Title 8, right? And it's 1325 if you enter in the country illegally. Mm-hmm. What Border Patrol's job is we will process each individual what they tell us their situation is. Okay. Right. And then we have to do a little bit of an investigation, a very minor investigation of that clause, right? Or their claim. But our job is not to determine whether their story is true or false. Our job is just to process the paperwork, hand them off to ICE. ICE houses them and gets them to meet the immigration judge who determines their case. Okay. And so if you understand that foundation of where you start, like if this grand scale of all immigration, if you just start with the first contact, us as Border Patrol agents, all our job is to, if you've attempted to cross illegally, our job is to try and stop you. And once we do stop you, we process you. And once we process you, we hand you off. And we process you based on what you determine your case is. So if they say, we're seeking asylum, we're like, okay. And they say, we're here just trying to work. Okay. We process it, whatever the policy is in place at that time, and then we hand it off. And so understanding that is just like a sheriff doesn't determine the speed limit in the state, he just enforces it. The Border Patrol doesn't determine what the policy is. We just enforce it. Okay. And so if you're wanting to really have a good posture, you have to have a support system that goes all the way to the top. You have to implement maybe an executive order. You have to do things that will not incentivize illegal immigration and push people to start using legal immigration. If you create, and there's an argument here, I'll caveat to it later, but the point is, like, if you continue to make it easy just to do it illegally, what's the point of ever doing it legally?
Exactly.
So that's the situation we have right now. For some reason, and we have a massive influx because they know that. They're like, hey, go to America in 3 days, you're going to be released. There's going to be a notice to appear.
You're going to have a cell phone.
Right, cell phone money, and you're going to be able to, you won't even get to see the judge for 5 to 10 years. So now that they know that, they're like, well, then what's the fucking point? Let's go. And so
you can't break them.
Is that accurate? Is that the process? So like you hand them off to ICE, and then ICE goes, hey, the judge can't see you for 5 years, so we're just going to release you. Like, they don't send them back to their country; they just release them to the United States.
So
requesting asylum,
right? If they're requesting asylum, as I am processing the individual and I've rolled their fingerprints and I've identified who they are, if there's nothing in the database that proves this person is a suspect from any kind of crime, harsh crimes, rape, murders, it could even be, multiple DUIs. If they have some kind of record, we will send them back. Okay. That's because we're not releasing you back to this country.
Okay.
But if you're seeking asylum, and just understand, they could do all that in another country and have no record where we're at. So there's still people that could potentially come through that still have that background. It's just the ones that we roll and we can identify. We stop right there. They're getting deported immediately because we don't want that process. Right. But if you're claiming asylum, if you're a guy that has no previous record, you're seeking asylum, we will honor that. At this moment, currently in the policies, we will honor you seeking asylum until the immigration judge determines if it's true or false. Okay. The immigration judges are so backed up, they won't see you for at least 5 years.
That's insane, man. How do you remedy that issue?
Well,
have more judges or something.
Wait, first of all, there's, so I didn't say in the book as much because the more I get interviewed, the more I have to find more answers because it's like people are giving me challenging questions, and which is valid, and I love it because it makes me. I already know I'm writing a second book. I called my buddy today. We're writing another book, and it's going to be
awesome.
The book is going to be the answers that we believe would help mitigate this, right? Like, genuinely,
that is excellent.
I have a list of these experts who are going to give full data points. So that's another story, but because of all these interviews, right? You heard it here first, absolutely. So, this isn't a 1 + 1 = 2 question. It's actually, it's a recipe for a cake. And if you fuck up anything, add too much, you fuck up the whole thing. And when I say that is, there's a lot of things that have to happen for this to get rectified. The first thing, we definitely have to have some kind of repercussion for illegal immigration. You're breaking a law.
Mm-hmm.
If you break a law, there's a repercussion. If we break a law in this country, there's a repercussion. Currently, the repercussion is a slap on the wrist, so no one gives a fuck. Let's keep going. So we have to have that. We also still have to always allow people to seek asylum, because we are a country that has dignity, right? And we want to maintain that dignity. You know, in legal immigration, there has to be a process where doing it legally is more streamlined. Currently, if you're a Mexican citizen or a Brit, it'll take 12 years sometimes, 10 to 12 years sometimes to become a citizen. That's a little crazy.
My wife is actually going through this process.
Right, Zach, how long has it taken so far, and how much has it cost you so far?
So she's not trying to become a citizen. She's Japanese. She's going to keep her Japanese citizenship. She's just working through the green card process to work, go in and out, that type of stuff. Yeah. I initially looked it up myself, and I was like, this is way too convoluted. I'm not figuring this out. So we hired a lawyer, and we're currently like $7-8 grand in. And it took about 6 months for her to get her temp green card, which is only like 2 years. We just applied for the next one, which would be 10 years. And that's been months now too. So I think ours was a little more streamlined because we did use a lawyer. I am active duty military. She's not a part of like anything crazy or bad too. Plus she was already here on a student visa. So like hers was easier, but I could definitely see how it could be very expensive in a long time, because when I was in recruiting, you'd get kids who would come in who would have like a 2-year green card, and they're like, hey, I want to join the Air Force. Like, Air Force policy says you have to have a green card that's at least 3 years before it expires, so that no one voids every 2-year one. So they have to get the next one, but all of them would be telling me I'm not going to get my next one. They're going to deny it, and I'm going to be here illegally, or I'm going to be sent back home.
As soon as you're out of status, now you're here illegally. So it's this real crazy. It's this real crazy catch-22 that's like doesn't.
And if you don't, and they give you a 2-year one, and you're like, hey, okay, it's good for 2 years, but if you don't start the renewal for your next one like 9 months before it expires, you're shit out of luck. Like you won't finish in time.
Then you will be here illegally, and now that's breaking a law. And now you try and apply for being a citizen, you'll be an even longer fucking delay. So there's issues in our system. We have hundreds of combat veterans who served our country who've been deported because they never got their paperwork finished by the time they got out, and then they got a DUI.
It's a fucking shame.
What the fuck? So you see what I'm saying? This is a 7-layer cake of fucking shit. We need to address all of these different things, and it's going to take a long time. It's going to take some policymakers to really give a shit about how deep this goes, right? Mm-hmm. The DACA conversation alone, right? The kids who are born here in America so that conversation alone is challenging, right? At some point, there's going to have to be a cutoff and say, sorry, no more, right?
So what do you think about like the guy Vivek Ramaswamy running for president says he's getting rid of anchor babies? What do you your opinion on that?
Vivek's comment on that was something that was so profound to me, because I never thought of it that way, and I found it to be he's absolutely right. In my opinion, I thought like, holy shit, that's a very intelligent way of seeing this. Like, people are using it's another loophole to our system, because once they have a baby here, then they turn around, they can sponsor their own family and so on and so forth, right? Mm-hmm. So it becomes this almost like a pyramid scheme, of like of sponsoring everyone else in your family and then pulling them in through the loophole of the immigration process, which, if they're doing the process legally, it's part of our process. We accept, I think we accept something like 1 million freaking immigrants illegally a year, right?
If not more. Yeah. You said illegally or legally?
Legally, I think it's 1 point something a year. And so the point is, like, all those little loopholes that are causing, like, we're fucking sinking our own ship here. You know what I mean? And the illegal process is even worse, right? They said since the Biden administration in office, it's something like I think it's 5 to 8 million undocumented or come here illegally and been released into America, right? So there's a long-term effects that are going to come about eventually, and the bleeding heart that says open the borders doesn't think about that. And then the other side of it is, like I said, I always want to be a country that is rooted on freedom, and in that freedom is opportunity. And so we have to find the balance of both of those arguments, and where they can both be successful. and we can still be very human and have dignity.
Yeah, it's again a huge dichotomy, because I'm like you, like I want to help these people coming in, and I think that the United States should be that place. It's given so many people opportunities. Like my family wasn't born here, we immigrated a few generations ago, and we're here because of what America is. And my biggest concern is when you look back at other civilizations, or through history, the erosion of an identity, a national identity, and having people come into the country that care and immigrate here and move and want to be a part of it and make it better.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I'm concerned that a lot of people coming in, they see the opportunity, but don't want to contribute to what makes America the way it is, as the country we've become. And, the melting pot that we are, I think, and this sounds trite to say, but it's the truth. It makes us what and how great of a country we actually are,
Absolutely.
And so I'm not opposed at all to people immigrating here. I want people to, because I want the best and brightest coming here. We have this society that's amazing, but I am concerned that these aren't people showing up like in 1910 to Ellis Island, who see America as the shining city on the hill, right? And they see it as just a place where they can go and get on, welfare and just exist, and I know that's not everybody, and that's probably the minority of people, but I feel like the more you have people come in, the more that number grows of folks who don't necessarily care to contribute to America.
Yeah, think of it this way: if you didn't care to follow our rules and our laws, then and just to come here and then reap the benefits of this, what's to say you're going to even care to invest back into this country and keep it what it is, so that future generations can have that same opportunity to come here? Right. And that's a big problem for me. You want people coming here who believe in what America stands for, and appreciates and shows gratitude by raising kids to believe in what America stands for. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But when we're not telling you to forget your culture, we're not telling you to forget your heritage. We're telling you to invest back into the belief of what this country stands for. That American flag stands for exactly the opportunity that you wanted, that my grandmother came across for, that so on and so forth. And since that American flag stands for that, we currently are in a position where people are demonizing that flag and demonizing our the Pledge of Allegiance or the the national anthem, and they're demonizing it to be like it's racist. Like, no, it's not racist. It's actually everything outside of that. It is the one thing that lets you fight against racism. It's the one thing that allows you to have a voice. It's the one thing that allows you to protest. All those things that are happening currently, like, that flag represents that. It represents the fight and the struggle and the belief of the free man. And when you believe in that, you stop believing it and you stop investing in that, we start to lose the identity of this culture, of this country.
Man, you're preaching. Seriously. Like, that same flag is the flag that lets you go up to the statue of George Washington and drape a Palestinian flag over it, and then, write, fuck America on the side of it. You know what I mean? Couldn't do that in China. You certainly walk up with a Taiwanese flag and hang it over the statue of Mao. That's probably the last time anybody saw you.
Bro, there was an Olympic high-level wrestler who spoke against Iran, and they killed him. And they killed him.
I've heard this story.
It was probably about 2 years ago, and it was the hardest thing to hear, because we're a wrestling family, and so to hear that that would never happen in America. You speak against. You have the right to. You're completely allowed to.
You can't spend 5 minutes on the internet without saying a fuck Joe Biden or fuck Donald Trump or whatever. You know what I mean? That's it. That's part of the American experience. And that's exactly what makes us as great of a country as we are. And this may not be on the topic of like what we're getting at, but that's kind of what's so scary about seeing a lot of people online now with wanting to lose that rebellious spirit we all have as Americans. And you more and more see people sort of like lionize politicians, and they lionize the government, and the government's supposed to take care of us and all this stuff. It's like, that's literally not the truth. The government is here. It works for you. It works for you, right? It actually says we have the ability to throw off a tyrannical government, in our founding documents. Anyway, that's my concern is, all this stuff, is being lost. And part of the problem, I think, is this immigration problem is not being done the right way. I think also the test that you have to take to become a citizen of this country, you should have to take that test to graduate high school.
Yeah, you know something wild is if you meet some immigrants who are entrepreneurs, they're the first ones to be like, man, this country has given me the opportunity, right?
Yes.
And if you meet them, they would have more pride in America than Americans who are born here.
Yes.
Who are now starting to like shit on America, and you're like, hold the fuck up.
People saw that so often when I was in recruiting. That 2-year green card guy would be like, I need to give back to this country who gave me a chance. I need to fight for this nation. I need to like do all this stuff. And then I'd be in the high school and there'd be the, the natural born American kid there who's like, man, fuck you, fuck this. Like, it's like, dude, you're complete opposites because you have no relevancy to anything you understand. And that
no concept of a worse environment.
Yeah. The green card kid gets it. Right. Like, he understands it.
Right. They sit in that position of privilege. You know, they've never seen what a third world country looks like. They've never seen, what it's like to starve or watch their family struggle to fucking just to buy beans. You know what I mean? It's like
the poorest American is richer than like 90-something% of the world or something like that.
Dude, think of all the locals that would come and work on camp, man. Like a couple of those guys, like, I used to see him every day and he was wearing a New England Patriots t-shirt. I'm like, I know you did not buy that here. Yeah, I know you did not buy that here, and it's like, if you had to wear the same shirt every day to work and, you're cleaning bathrooms for Americans, you know what I mean? Like that's, if people complain about their 8-hour shift at Starbucks, I sound like an old man right now, probably complaining, but like, it's true though, it is true. And we are very fortunate here as Americans, incredibly fortunate.
And, this will only continue to exist as long as we understand the culture of what America is and continue to defend that, whether it is, and at the least teach your kids to respect what they have. You know what I mean? Like, it's us parents who have to teach. Like, my kids understand it. They get it. You know what I mean? And I have a daughter who's very liberal, but she's very liberal in her ideas. And I'm always like, who the fuck raised you? I did. But in the same aspect, she appreciates military. She appreciates the country. She gets it, right? So it's she's outspoken on her beliefs on different subjects, and we don't agree on all of them. That's okay. She's allowed to have it. You know what I mean? Yeah, she's allowed to have a thought. Yeah. But she'll never turn her back on like the military is important,
Right. America is important. It's good to have liberalism. They're the ones that are supposed to stick up for the little guy. So
yeah. Going back to like the percentages and stuff, it says here that the poorest 20% of Americans are richer on average than most other nations.
Yeah.
So like, and then I just wanted to go back to the numbers for immigration. You're saying 1.2. It's actually 1.5 million for the most recent year. The highest year was 2016 at 2.7 million. And then this crazy graph.
The president. That was
17?
16.
2016. That was the year Trump got elected.
It's the transition year.
Yeah, the transition year. What's funny is Obama was one of the most strict presidents we've had on board of illegal immigration.
Really? If you look at this graph during Bush, it's higher than most of Obama's stuff. So it is.
Obama had several executive orders, and it was really interesting. One that I partake in when I was in it was called Operation Streamline. And if you came across illegally, you immediately went to jail 30 days. No matter what. I don't care what it's for. You're going to jail for 30 days. The second time it was like 6 months. The next time it's a fucking year. The next time it's 5 years. So it was setting a precedence of like, just don't do it. And at the time, man, we were lucky that to apprehend maybe 10 people in one night was like, that was a busy night. You know what I mean?
So now, it's deterring, you're saying.
Yeah, because no one wants to go to jail for 30 fucking days, dude.
No.
What happens is they send the message down south and everyone's like, well, don't go there no more. Yeah. Go somewhere else. And they find the pocket because in Arizona, you can cross fucking 12 times and no one gave a fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's an interesting cycle of trying to find the pocket of the border that currently has a policy that's like, we're just going to process them and give an NTA.
That's crazy.
You want to know something scary, Brandon?
I always want to know something scary.
So this is breaking down. This is usafacts.org. All right.
Okay.
And it was breaking down all the immigration and stuff. And they're talking about percentages and where they come from. You would think, right? Like, where do you think majority of immigrants legally come from, Brandon?
Legal immigrants?
Yeah, legal.
It's a great question, dude. Maybe
Is it India?
I would say Pacific countries.
It is the Pacific. Well, it's like Asian
Philippines.
Countries. Yeah, it's mostly Asian countries, but the number one is China.
Oh, well, I think, dude, I could tell you some crazy stories about when I was stationed, dude. When I was stationed in Montana, and for everybody, if you're not familiar, there's some big missile fields in Montana, and one of the years, some nukes, exactly. One of the years that I was there was a massive influx of Chinese students on student visas that applied to and got accepted to Great Falls University in Montana. And who the fuck's ever heard of Great Falls unless you're like a Lewis and Clark historian? And for real. And this was because the local paper advertised that Malmstrom Air Force Base was getting an RPA program. And it doesn't, but it advertised that it was getting an RPA
There's
program.
A test?
I don't think it was a test. I think that the consequence of seeing this like weird uptick in Chinese students at Great Falls, it was a Catholic university too, which should just also be a red flag.
Yeah,
that they were
religious.
Chinese. Yeah, they're not very religious at all. And the second that they figured that out, they decided they weren't moving that RPA program to Malmstrom, and there was a bunch of disenrollments at the university. And
a whole bunch of Chinese spies. And then the second RPA goes
all around Malmstrom is a lot of like open prairie. Montana is just really, really open.
Yeah.
And you can get paid if you own land in Montana to get like a wind farm put up on your land, and they'll pay you a lot of money. And a lot of those wind farms around Malmstrom are owned by Chinese subsidiary companies. And it's just kind of crazy. Like, I never talk about like China, but yeah, dude, I'm not surprised at all. And I also think it's funny too, because like if you've ever spent any amount of time on base, also how many Filipino people there are everywhere. So that's why I said that, dude, for real, because I know there's a lot of very proud Filipino veterans. So
yep.
But yeah, so that is scary, Zach. I appreciate that. So, but kind of derailed my train of thought. But
you're welcome.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you, as somebody who has put your life on the line for our country, like, how does some of the American foreign policy that we've adopted maybe over the past 20 years, how has that made you feel? Like, how do you kind of see us as a country?
I'm not familiar in that, man. I'm more of like a subject matter expert in the Border Patrol, and so, I paid attention a little bit to from Obama era to the Trump era as well. I paid attention a little bit to it, but I'm not well versed in it to even speak on, to be honest.
No worries. Okay, no, I appreciate that.
I was curious when you said this. This goes back a little bit. I wanted to ask you later, but we were going, so I didn't want to interrupt. But you said they like get released right before they go to see like the judge or whatever. They just get released into the United States. What is their status at that time? Can they work? Can they go to school? Can they? What are they legally?
I know they can work. Yeah, they can. I'm almost positive they can do. They're given permission to do all of that because they're here for like a
social security card. Are they given like an ID?
No, they're not given a social security card.
Okay.
There's a different. I don't know exactly how they do that. To be honest, I'll figure that one out. But they're determined that they give a phone number and address, and so they say that's where they're going, and they go to that location. From there, it's whatever they do. Some states, they allow them to work and they allow them to go to school. They allow them to, so it's just depending on the state that they go to and what the policies in that state. Mm-hmm. But I know for a fact, a lot of those guys are getting, they're getting their medical, they're getting their education, they're getting their work. And so,
do you know if they're under like strict, like if they get like pulled over by a cop, a ticket's like a slap on the wrist, it probably doesn't mean anything, but like if they get stopped by a cop for something like more serious, like maybe like reckless endangerment or like having a gun, like
then they'll be deported.
Okay. Good to
even
know.
Even if it's a DUI, they'll get deported.
Okay.
That deportation, is that like a permanent deported, or is there like a time period you do 3 years and then you can try and come back legally?
Yeah, so usually after your first offense, it's 5 years after that.
Okay, 5 years. That's not
So,
bad, I guess.
just to clarify, they can come in for asylum, true or not. They get released. They're supposed to see the judge. The judge is usually about 5 years, so they're just like sent out into the United States and they can work. They get health care, depending on the states and all that type of stuff. And they're supposed to be on a pretty tight leash. If they break too many laws or too harsh of laws, they're supposed to be deported. But other than that, they can just exist in the United States until that date.
Correct. And after that
Okay.
date, they'd be considered out of status, right? They'd be considered out of status after that
Depending
date.
on if they saw the judge, what the judge said, all that type of stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Which most of the time they don't even return back to the judge.
Yeah.
Tough, man. It's a tough.
Yeah.
I'm in the process of writing something to explain my concerns of that, but I'm very cautious about how I word things. I'm very cautious about the message I put out, because it's very easy to say something and people jump on board with it, but aggressively, right? This is people have a lot of emotional responses to this, right?
Sure.
Maybe because I don't fear death, maybe because I've seen a lot of shit in war, and if it comes down to the worst case scenario where I have to just fucking, put my rifle on my shoulder and go to work, you know what I mean, then so be it. So I don't fear any of it. So I don't get emotionally invested in any of this.
Mm-hmm.
I sit back and I kind of make a calculated and educated response to everything. The way I wrote the book was a calculated and educated response to all of it. And I'm currently writing something that I'm doing the same. I feel like
I think that's cool.
if we emotionally respond to these things, we don't have an educated response, and we're just hurting the conversation even more. Mm-hmm. And we're not getting to a place where we can have a good discussion and find answers. It's too much emotional investment on the left and the right that is not getting down to like, well, how do we fucking solve this? And I've been sitting here with a think group I have that we really try and get down to like, what are the areas we can attack to try and, find answers that actually creates and implements change. And what's happening currently with a lot of illegal immigrants who are released into America, there's a concern there that we are creating a ticking time bomb. There's a concern there. But I don't emotionally fucking get like, oh, I'm angry about it. I'm just like, okay, check, got it. What do I need to be prepared for now, right? And how do I need to see this potential problem? And that's how I see it. I don't get emotional about it. I get more like, okay, cool. I know that's an issue, and so I'm going to kind of observe that, and I'm also going to start taking actions on what I think should be done best for my family. But as well as how I want to educate the United States on that subject as well is what I'm writing next.
Has anybody like approached you about like trying to be, obviously your book would be like public, but like what you have to say directly, like being more public, I guess, in like the news forum, or like, teaming up with people who can actually enact action, make a difference, that kind of thing?
Yeah, right now I'm kind of the subject matter expert who's outspoken about it. There's a few things I can't mention that I'm part of, that's will come to light soon enough that I will be able to post. But right now we're in the process of I should be at some of the big tables in discussions on how we kind of fix this issue. Awesome. And you'll be able to hear more about it soon. It's a risk taking this position. I'm a guy in Hollywood doesn't always, see eye to eye with some of the ideas that I have. And that's okay, right? Like, we're allowed to have these opinions, but me putting my story out as a Border Patrol agent can definitely kind of blackball me in some areas. And so, me and the wife had a long discussion about what the plan is. And I said, I feel compelled to tell the story, and I believe I can tell the story in a way that people can appreciate. And I think I did it.
You did a good job. Yeah, I agree. It was a really good book. I wanted to know, like, the mental health issues in Border Patrol have got to be pretty bad. Is that something like in the military? It's a massive focus now. I feel like it's another federal agency. It's probably just as much of a focus, or the rates as bad as like active duty.
Yeah, it is now. It's become, so about 4 years ago, I started working with the Border Patrol in their messaging when it comes to resiliency, right? So
Okay.
some of the bigger Stratcom teams, which is the strategic communications teams of the Border Patrol, came to me and like, how do we talk about this? They see what I do in the military side of things or in the veteran side of things, and so I explained to them what positive psychology is and implementation of what resiliency programs. So I'll say it here on here. I don't use the word suicide often because if you understand the psychology behind messaging, right? Part of my career was psychological operations. The other part of my life is, I'm finishing up my master's in psychology, and awesome. I've been working in this space for a very long time and understand how to use strategic messaging to be successful in our veteran community. That's why I own a company called Veteran. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I also own a company called Light the Fuse, which is a wellness kind of company. And so we have gone away from talking about suicide because there's studies, white paper studies, that prove that the conversation of suicide continues to create more suicide. There's a white paper study called Suicide Contagion. And so as the Army implemented suicide prevention programs, they saw an uptick in suicide because now they're giving the idea of it to vulnerable individuals.
It's just funny. I want to say real fast. I remember when they first started doing that training when I joined the military, they were literally saying, no, you have to talk about it. It doesn't encourage people. You don't give somebody ideas when you say that. And it's literally the opposite. That's the truth.
Absolutely. It's the opposite. It's proven to be the absolute opposite. And so when organizations come to me and ask what can they do to implement to organization, I tell them get rid of your suicide prevention program and start to implement a resiliency program. So resiliency and wellness is where we should be identifying, so if you talk about suicide, we're talking about the worst case scenario. We're talking about the outcome of people living a redlined life. So in military, if you've ever been a part of a military training environment, you have to create mitigation for any kind of crisis, right? So safety mitigation in all training, so no one gets hurt, right?
Fire evacuation plan,
right? And so we don't say, hey, once they get burned, then we're going to put, we're going to do medical prevention. We're going to stop them from even getting to that fucking point. And so in my world, I teach resiliency. And in that resiliency, I teach different modalities of healing. And so what we do is we identify 5 areas of people's lives, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and professional. Right. And we identify those 5 areas are the most significant areas of our life. And so if we can teach people how to live healthier, well-rounded life, we can teach them how to build the resiliency tools so that when they do find themselves in crisis, they know how to handle it. And so, that's what we've done with the help with the Border Patrol originally in their messaging. And that's what I do currently outside of everything else I do.
I love that because I've said this so many times when we have these trainings and we have these conversations, because I've been in units where we've had suicide, and I've been in like brother or sister units where they had suicides. And I've always said this is like these programs, at least my experience is the Air Force, right? These programs almost take the role of maintaining your like morale and resiliency out of your hands and tell you, it almost feels like it tells you you have no control over what's happening to you or how you're feeling or these emotions, that they're just happening to you and you have no control over it. And then I've always said this is not actually teaching somebody to overcome those things. It's basically telling them they're a victim and here is a conversation with the first sergeant and you should feel better when you're done. And here's a timeline where I need you to get over it. You know what I mean? And you can't put a timeline on stuff like that. And I love hearing you say that, like teaching actual resiliency, because I feel like it puts some of that back in somebody's hand and kind of helps them realize I can work towards feeling better. And here are some tools and things that I can do. And I'm not just a victim of this depression I'm feeling or the situation that happened or whatever, I love that. Very fresh.
If we circle back to the conversation of our kids in sports, like, did you tell your kids you're going to be a loser your whole life? So just get used to it, but you can tell me. No, you don't tell your kids. You say, hey, you lost today and we can build on this, and we can learn from this, and how we can get better, and we can teach you how to manage these losses, and we can give you the tools to actually learn how to win. Right. And it's the same exact concept is let me give you tools when you start to feel yourself in crisis. Let's stop and let's take a breather. Let's do a fucking 30 minutes of grounding and breathing. Let's fucking reorganize this brain for a second. And then when you get that done, let's start implementing other things. How did you get to this point? All right. What are the things that are happening in your life right now? What's the stressors that we can mitigate? And if you teach people and you give them a fucking tool bag of fucking tricks that they can use, well, now they don't need to call you. They're going to be like, man, you should have seen last night I was in a crisis, but I started doing my breathing techniques and I started meditating, and then I didn't drink, which thank God, because normally when I drink, I fucking go even further down the right. And so you start like, so now they'll call you and be like, bro, this worked for me. This is what I'm doing. I'm actually implemented a workout sessions. I actually went to a meditation. I went to a counselor, did EMDR. So it becomes the cool to actually start debriefing stress, right? And start to break down all these traumas that for so long we hold in, and then we say, hey, let's go drink, right? And then you don't realize that you've probably given that guy the tool. So there's another white paper study that says if you have post-traumatic stress, TBI, and drinking, you create suicide ideation.
Wow.
So you're like, oh, okay, cool. So every fucking dude who's ever gotten a TBI and has post-traumatic stress and starts to drinking because this is what we do, we've just fucking implemented a cocktail, a suicide cocktail that teaches them their brain. They can't even stop it. Their brain creates suicide ideation because of these compounds all combined. It's this crazy fucking phenomenon that your brain does. And so, for me, my own special operations community, I have guys who've done the same combat missions as me, same things. And, you know, I have a couple of my buddies who committed suicide. And you're like, well, wait, were they drinking? Yeah. Like,
yeah,
right, well, I'm sober. So I've been sober 4 years. Today was 4 years, 5 months, and 12 days.
Congratulations.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. And the point of it was, how do I implement another tool that can save me in the moment of crisis? Well, drinking is the one where, if you look at the statistics of any one of your buddies who've committed suicide, and I don't want to say this lightly, I'm saying, see if they were drinking. And I'm gonna tell you, they were fucking drinking.
I'm gonna tell you, this is a true story. The first person I ever lost to suicide in the military was a friend of mine from tech school, and it was his 21st birthday. And the unit he was in, he was partying with a bunch of guys, and they kind of, from what I was told, I wasn't there, they were hazing him pretty bad because he's a new airman. And 21st birthday, got him shit-faced, started hazing him. He went right back to his dorm room and killed himself. And I mean, to me, I feel like, and have always felt like, that the alcohol was what like lubricated that line between, okay, I feel like shit because these people made me feel like shit, to I'm going to take care of the problem and I'm the problem. And I've seen so many, I don't know if you know, like Zach and I are both cops in the Air Force. And so we've dealt with a lot of suicide, like in people we know and then responding to, or people that are ideating or whatever. And I would tell you, I would say at least 8 out of 10 of these responses I've been to, all of them involve alcohol. All of them involve some sort of trauma that happened very, very soon, or like recent to like the situation, this traumatic, intense situation we're dealing with now as a law enforcement professional in your home or whatever. And that is so true. And it's wild to me, you know, because this is, again, it's like the Class 6 is right down the street on every base, and it's like actively encouraged to go get intoxicated. And believe me, I like drinking, and I think, you know, I can do it responsibly, you know, and I don't see a problem with you wanting to be responsible and drink. But it's just like, here's all these issues that you're dealing with. Here's no tools to help you. Go to the Class 6.
Every military function has like,
every military function.
Booster Club put $200 on the bar. Everyone run there and get your free drink. And like, alcohol's a depressant. Like,
every pilot squadron has a bar. Every pilot squadron has a bar.
Yeah. So like, think about bars. We've created a drinking culture, which is fine. Okay, that's cool. But how many of these people have all the other issues in their life that they're not managing? Relationships, finances, right? Traumas they haven't healed. All these things that we don't know, are we handing them the one thing that's going to set them over the edge? And so that's a risk you take every time you invite alcohol to a party or to a function. Like, we have to really understand our men, and we have to give them tools so that drinking isn't the fuck it button for them, right? That's what I call kind of the fuck it button. Like, fuck it.
Yeah. I had one real close friend who was like really down in the dumps, not having a fun time, drinking all the time, had a gun in his possession stuff, and I noticed the signs, and I was like, look, dude, like, I'm taking your gun. You're not getting easy out. You're not doing that to me. You're not doing it to yourself. You're not doing it to your family and friends. So I took his gun and stuff, and then I just kept reminding him, I was like, stop. Like, you got to stop going always to alcohol, dude. It's not the answer. You got to do something else. And eventually he stopped. He's happily married now, doing great. Still doesn't have any guns, but I actually bought his only gun from him after the whole thing. He thanked me for doing his stuff, but alcohol, it just starts getting you down that spiral, and then
the natural depressant.
Yeah, and then it just reverberates, and then you think, oh, I feel like crap, so I'm going to drink to feel more like crap. Like, okay,
yeah,
that makes sense.
Well, on top of that, while we're on the subject, like, I'm very cognizant about how I set up my writing and what I say, and I'm very cognizant of how I use my social media platform.
Right.
And in saying that, there's a lot of veterans who mean well. They mean well by posting these suicide conversations, or these I call them Debbie Downer posts. You know what I mean? They highlight suicide to hopefully have an emotional response to people, so then people now know veterans struggle with suicide, right? So if they're still on the mindset that suicide awareness is a thing, and suicide awareness is fucking done. Everyone knows, right? But because the easy thing to generate likes and shares is to promote and post the emotional response to suicide. So all these social media influencers, like, they don't understand messaging the way I do. They don't understand communication. They don't understand, like, the power of influence. But what they do understand is that people have an emotional response to veteran suicide, right? The topic of veteran suicide, people are like, oh, I care, so I'll share, right? Or they'll comment, and they'll lay 22 a day, and they'll do all those things. But what they don't get is they're continuing to perpetuate suicide by promoting suicide, by promoting the Debbie Downer post. So they're wrong in their messaging, and they don't realize that. They don't understand what psychology. They don't understand subconsciously. They're giving the message to people who are vulnerable, right? They think they're doing good by saying suicide awareness. Like, no, motherfucker, I'm gonna promise you, suicide awareness is already done. Suicide prevention is important, but how do you do suicide prevention? It's called resiliency. You see what I'm saying? And so they're stuck in the idea that they're making impacts by talking about suicide, and they're not. They're actually doing the same thing of what a suicide prevention program does. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. And so, you need like 1,000 of you.
Right. And so what we need to do is teach guys tools. We need to be on the side of resiliency and wellness, and to teach growth, and not allow people to victimize their situation. I have a guy the other day, he goes, bro, I joined your fucking Light the Fuse group, and fuck that group, bro. I posted in there that I was struggling, and fucking no one came to rescue me. I said, bro, were you drinking? Yeah. Well, then that's your first fucking problem. Don't come to my group thinking it's all the other veteran groups that all celebrate victimization. My group celebrates growth. My group is a group of accountability. You're drinking, your fault. You want to get sober? We have a group for that. Get sober, motherfucker. But if you're coming here to fucking try and pull me down with you while you're down your downward spiral of fucking sadness, fucking like feel sorry for me, we don't do that here. I'll tell you, if you need help, I'll send you fucking straight to a fucking sober clinic. That's what I'll do. I don't fucking bullshit nobody. Hey, I'm getting divorced. Okay, cool. That's done. What are you doing next? They're like, huh? I'm like, that's already done, right? You're getting divorced. It's done.
Yeah, so let's not the typical response.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's figure out our fucking finances. Let's get to the fucking gym. Let's get better. Let's figure out our money. Let's be good for your fucking kids, because they're going to still need you. And let's get ready for the next fucking woman and be the best version of you, so you don't fuck that one up too. You see what I'm saying?
Like tough love that most of us resonate with, I feel like,
It's not just tough love. It's tough love with education. It's like, hey, let's be honest. I don't need to feel sorry for you. It all sucks. We're going to go through it. But there's answers once you get past the fucking victimization of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we sit too long in this victimization saying, please feel sorry for me, world. I'm going through it. And you're like, stop. If you want answers, go to counseling straight up. I'll give you fucking 20 places you can go. You want to fucking heal trauma? You want to do fucking plant medicine? You tell me what you want. I'll send you right to the motherfucker. Because there's answers. There's a million different nonprofits that can fucking find an answer for you. But are you willing to take it? So when you come to me, I say, yeah, you can lead a horse to water, but motherfucker, I'll make you drink it.
Hell yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because that's what we need. We need to stop victimizing. We need to stop these groups that are called dysfunctional veterans. Like, no, you're not, bitch. You're a fucking whiny bitch. Right?
I've seen that group.
Yeah, and so it's like, you think that promotes positivity? No, it promotes victimization.
It's like a cycle. I feel like it creates just a loop.
Exactly. And it promotes alienating yourself from a group. It's like, that's not transitioning healthy. That's saying you're better than other, but that no one understands me. No one understands me because veterans have the monopoly on trauma. No, we don't.
Dude,
no, we don't. You see what I'm saying? And so if you want to talk about psychology and you want to talk about positive psychology, you want to talk about growth, and you want to talk about keeping people resilient, it's like, give them the tools to fucking be successful. Stop letting them fucking wallow in their fucking sadness, because there's answers for all of this.
Yeah.
And if you don't want the answers, well, then you don't want to get better, and you want people to feel sorry for you. And you know what? Don't come to me for that type of shit, because I don't feel sorry for you. We're all going through the fucking world, right? We're all in this spinning fucking ball trying to find a way to be happy. Okay? And so there's answers, and you got to start taking those answers, or else get out of my way, dude. Don't pull me down with your shit.
Right. Dude, I think there's a lot of people that need to realize that they do just want sympathy and get past that, and before they can get help. You know what I mean? Because I think that they think that sympathy is help, you know, but it doesn't actually build you up. It's just like kind of almost like confirmation bias. Like, yep, I'm depressed. Thank you for validating that feeling.
Confirmation bias. Exactly.
That's something I learned when I went, because I'm the shirt now for my unit, and I went through like shirt training. And one of the big things they said is, whenever you're dealing with an issue, you should like just straight up ask them at the beginning, do you want me to just listen, or do you want me to solve your problem? And that will dictate how the rest of it goes. You just want to vent to me and just an hour go blah, and then I'll just yep, got it, and then, all right, was that a good venting session? All right, see you later.
Yeah, well, that's what me.
If you tell me I want to solve your problem, then okay, I'm writing down notes now, and now everything you say to me, it's stupid, I'm calling you out on it.
That's me and my wife is, right? So I want to solve your problem, but you just want to vent. I know that now. So my wife says, blah, 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 and she hits me with all of it. I'm like, cool. I'm like, yeah, I hear you, Mama, I hear you. And then that's it. I'm not going to solve your problem, because you don't want to solve your problem.
Yeah,
you just want to get it off the chest. Well, you
want to said that to me so many times. I don't need a solution. Just listen. And that's us, you know, it's like fixers, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to fix it, but I'm like, you know what? There's no fixing this. She just wants to get off her chest, because she's been dealing with all the kids this whole time. She wants to talk to an adult and let it out. Blah,
right.
Exactly. Gotcha, Mama. Yeah, and I got to tell myself, don't try and fix this shit. Just let it go. Let it go. You know what I mean?
It's an actual process to take yourself through in your brain to like, nope, just listen. You know? So that's so funny.
Then there's moments where I know I need to fix it, where she's like, I just can't find where this is. Here you go. How'd you find it? I Googled
it. Right. You have this thing. It's called a smartphone. Yeah.
I'm the holder of all secrets and knowledge, babe.
Exactly.
Exactly. I am now with AI too, bro. I got everything.
Oh my, yeah. Exactly. Let me ask ChatGPT real fast.
Yeah, I did. I ChatGPT a question for my daughter today for math. I was like, give me a second.
Dude, wow, it's changing the game. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question that kind of go back to the border again.
Yeah.
Is a valid concern I see a lot of people voicing is the amount of military age males that we see coming across the border. Like, I can buy the story of asylum when you're a mother with your kids, you know, making your way across, but when you're 19, 20 years old, it's a little harder to believe, and it's also concerning. It's like, we were just talking about, we're the fixers, right? Why are you not doing what you're supposed to be doing to try and fix these problems that are ongoing in your country? And why are the majority of these people I see seem to be like the 18 to 25 crowd?
Yeah, well, you know, there's two sides of that answer. Like, so the tactical side, like us in this room, right, who are military guys who defend our country, we see that as a threat. Right. The other side of us sees it like, well, that's the average age of a working male anywhere.
Okay,
you know,
that's
and
valid. Yeah.
Right. And so, like, if they're going to come here to work in the fields too, they're going to be that age, right? If they're going to be here to just to work and earn money for their country and send it back to their wife and kids, they're going to be that age. And so, I don't say that lightly, right?
Yeah.
That's also the age that fights wars. Yes.
Right.
But if you want to be the devil's advocate for that, that's also the man who works for his family. So,
Sure.
It's interesting, right? Like I said, like, I'll say it like that. I don't have an emotional response to that. I say, realistically, if I'm not just an angry person, I'm going to say that's just the age of the man who can make the journey, who can fucking go to work, and who's going to send money back to his family. So
I mean, that's true. That's probably the smartest answer I've heard to that question, because Joe Rogan says don't read the comments, but I read the comments pretty often. And, you see a lot of dumbass shit in the comments, and it's like, I see these things. It's like, it's a valid concern to see, like, yes, like we were talking about, these are all military age males. These are the guys that you see, but I've never once seen somebody be like, okay, true, but that's also the dude that's trying to provide for a family, the 24-year-old that's coming across, and there's better opportunities here or whatever, Yeah. So, and I'll be totally frank, I've never even thought of it that way. So I appreciate the fresh perspective.
You talked about, you're really good at keeping like your emotions out of it, stuff like that. Obviously, working in Border Patrol, you probably came across some very sketch individuals who probably are part of like maybe some bigger organized crime and stuff like that.
Cartel.
Have you ever had a time where like someone you were directly talking to or whatever, like threatened your family, like come pretty strong in that sense, or you felt that like the person you maybe had to let go was in like you knew you shouldn't have let them go? Does that ever kind of happen?
There's no one if I put my hands on them, I'd never let them go.
Okay, fair enough. Good to know. When Vince is on the border, no one gets through.
Right. Vince the fence.
Yeah, if I got you, you're going in. It's the same overseas. I don't think I've ever had anger in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever had anger. It's like I'm a trained fighter. I know how to fucking knock a motherfucker out and not be mad at him, Mm-hmm. And so the same is like, if I've ever had to engage, there wasn't an anger to it. It was doing my job. And the same in the Border Patrol. We've taken down cartel dudes and there was no anger behind that. Even though if you sat there at night thinking about how nasty this dude had probably murdered people, I still don't have anger in my heart because at the moment I did my job. But I can definitely look back and be like, fuck, I'm glad I got that piece of shit person kind of thing. You see what I'm saying? In the moment of someone being aggressive with me out in the fields, I handle it accordingly, dude. Snatch them up, slam them down, fucking cuff them up, boom. The de-escalation, the threat's done. In the moment, it's a fight. And so I think that I'm very comfortable in those worlds. And so there was never a time where I feel like I've lost my anger. Mm-hmm. No, it's just been more like a after effect. You're like, oh shit, that was fucking crazy.
Yeah. Your conversation about resiliency kind of made me think about the military in general, and then like the retention issues that the military has. And I kind of was thinking, like, I almost wonder if a tertiary effect of making the current state of like military members more resilient would help reduce the retention issues that we have. Like if you can be more resilient, and then you would be willing more to stay in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think so, man. I think
you don't think so? Okay.
No, and I'll tell you what, I think the power of social media has kind of hurt the retention, right? The fact that you've seen guys like me, Matt Best, and we do this YouTube thing and find success outside, and you see other veterans find success. You see all these veterans doing successful shit and making good money, and you're like, this is cool, but that's good money, and that's a little bit of freedom. You know what I mean? And so it's really hard, I think, to maintain people when you can chase the dream, the American dream, dude, right? The American dream of entrepreneurship, guys who these Navy SEALs and these dudes have been able to make it happen. It's hard to keep these free thinkers, outside the box thinkers, into a world that keeps them in this box. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why you have a lot of special operations dudes get out and go do these multi-million-dollar companies and all this stuff, because like a lot of these dudes are outside the box thinkers already in how we do our job.
No doubt.
Be able to do your thing. But I think I think a big part of us not getting recruiting numbers is the fact of, like we talked about, like the dying culture of what America is, right? Like where people don't believe in it. But also as veterans, man, my daughters are afraid to join the military because they think they're going to be like me. They're like, I don't want PTSD, Dad. You know what I mean? I'm like, hold on.
Right. Everybody's got PTSD. That's like the thought.
Right, but
not dropping your daughters into Fallujah. It's not.
But I think we need to be a lot better at being honest with ourselves and saying, look, who fights our wars? It's the poor and the middle class. And why?
Yes.
Shit, we needed it, right? Like, look, I had a full ride, and if it wasn't for that full ride, I'd never have college. You know what I'm saying? My parents couldn't afford 4 kids going to college. My daughter, my oldest sister, she went to college. The rest of us figured it out, and eventually paid it on our own.
Right.
And so we need to be more honest with ourselves and telling those poor middle classes, like, look, you want to jump one level in your economic position? Join the fucking military. You don't have to be an infantryman.
No.
You can go do something fucking really good. But no one talks about that. I tell people all the time, like, go fucking be a goddamn intel analyst. You get on and get
program satellites. Go program satellites. You can do that when you get out.
Yeah, go
space propulsion, jet engine mechanic. There's so many things.
Yeah, we're not positive components of our own pushing the great career fields and the great opportunities that this can do for people. These illegal immigrants that are coming across, join the fucking military. Serve this country. Serve this country. Get your citizenship. And we should be pushing that more. That should be a big thing. Like, look, you want to come here, fine. Serve your country 3 years, dude. And here,
I think there's a lot of misplaced fear about that. I think there's a lot of misplaced fear about that. And I think it'd be a great way, not just for people coming over to immigrate to this country, but a lot of our younger people that are born here, American citizens in general, to put them, at least some sort of civil service. You know what I mean? Not necessarily the military. But man, that I agree with that so hard. Like, there's so much misplaced fear about it that I don't get. So
there's people that are struggling out there, man. There's people that don't have dental plans. There's people that are poor. And it's like, look, you don't have to be. You can seriously join the military and use the fuck out of the benefits while you're there. Get your teeth done. Get that money. Get your education paid for. Like, you want to jump an economic fucking position real quick? You want to change generational fucking value of your own fucking bloodline? Join the military. That'll put you poor to middle class real fucking quick.
Right. And you know what's funny too is that's not even just an American thing. As far back as there have been professional militaries, that is probably one of the most tried and true ways to jump from being one class to another, is going to that soldier middle class, right? And then coming out, and then you could become, this is where I'm become a patrician or whatever, and but it's so true. It's so true. And there's so much behind it historically to say that this is literally a tried and true method. Give it a shot,
If you're in Texas and you serve the military, your kids get the Hazelwood Act.
Yeah.
That's 4 years of fucking college.
California does something similar as well, actually.
Several states do something similar, but it's crazy. It's like, people don't get that. Like, look, you can be the poorest dude in Hoboken, Texas, who knows where. Go to college. Go to the military for 4 years, and now your kids will have college. You've now just changed the generational gap for your own family. You did it for your own kids. I don't know. That's how I think. I knew like serving, I'm going to go to college. I got my bachelor's degree. I'm working on my master's degree.
Yeah.
All the paid for by the government. I'm changing, like, my kids, they get a stipend when they go to college right now. So it's like, I don't think we're marketing that very well, and we're explaining that well. I don't think I don't think us as veterans are promoting this for our kids. I think guys are telling their kids, don't do it. I'm telling my kids, go for it. I'll guide you. I'll show you exactly how to do it so you can get the most out of it and get a skill set that you want. So,
I actually think there's a large population of veterans that are kind of discouraging military service right now.
Yeah, I know. I know for a fact there are, and I won't be that. I'm not on that bus. The VA is frustrating. Yep. But you know what? I've done my best to navigate that, and I endure that. And much as I'm a pain in the ass to them as much as they are to me, I've gotten everything I needed out of it. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah. It's about effort, I guess, when it comes to that. But honestly, man, having this conversation with you, you're a brilliant person. Absolutely. And I think what you're doing, no, I mean it. I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass. You're a lot more than just, the person that somebody may look at the cover of the book and see this big tough guy and, it's Border Patrol, former soldier. Like, nah, man, there's definitely levels to you that I've learned and appreciate from having this conversation. And I always really like to ask people this question, like before we like close out. So I'll let Zach jump in if he's got anything else he wants to talk to you about before I hit you with the cue. But Zach.
No, I'm good. I just wanted to say the answers you gave to some of the questions we had on the border kind of blew me away, because when I think of like a Border Patrol agent, I'm thinking that they are like working in law enforcement, most cops tend to have a very specific kind of like ideology when it comes to a lot of situations. And I was thinking you were going to be a certain way, and I was happy you weren't. So I just want to say thank you for being not what I thought you were going to be. That's great.
Well, I'll tell you this way: the Border Patrol career field is not like any other law enforcement.
Yeah,
we have to be humanitarians. We have to be enforcers. We also have to be crisis counselors in the moment of someone loses their family. We have to be medical technicians in the point that someone gets injured. So we have such a vast like tool bag of hats we need to wear, and we don't approach illegal immigration with the aggression that most law enforcement officers have to use their job and be kind of on a very aggressive posture. We're more of a posture of what's the situation and what hat do I need to wear at this moment. And so I don't punch my gun out and say, hey, you're here illegally. I say, parte. You know what I mean? I say, stop. Are you here illegally? Yeah. What do you need? Nothing. Get in the truck. Right. And so it's a passive approach to law enforcement that I think the outside world doesn't know and they don't expect. And most Border Patrol agents are Hispanic. And so there's empathy that comes along with understanding this world. And so, yeah, there's going to be aggressive dudes in our organization, just like there's dumbasses in every organization. Yeah. But the heart of the Border Patrol is the most patriotic organization in America, hands down, because we are the first line of defense of protecting this great nation from any kind of terrorist organization. And we are the number one organization that stops drugs more than the ATF. We handle most of our cases, right? And we are the biggest humanitarian mission that happens in our nation. Yep. So we fulfill both of those more than anyone else, and we get no credit for it, which we don't need the credit. My point is people don't know that.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I feel like there's a lot about the Border Patrol people just don't know and then underappreciate the hell out of. And that was kind of one of my goals tonight talking to you, is just to kind of hear this, the empathy, the human side, humanizing you guys that wear that Border Patrol badge and do this job, and say, I appreciate you. And I know that that's a hell of a hard job. I have another friend he's probably Air Force cop as well, who's in the Border Patrol as well in Texas. And it's hard work, and he's got a family and kids and all that. And I know that, military gets a lot of appreciation from people, but the Border Patrol, doesn't. And maybe some of that thank you for your service should head that way a little bit, maybe, So
I will say at Chipotle, Border Patrol agents and cops get 50% off. Military members do not.
If you didn't know, yeah, there you go. Chipotle appreciates our Border Patrol. Apparently,
you show them your badge, 50% off. You show them your tag, they don't care.
He's like, I'm gonna go to Chipotle tomorrow for lunch. The one question I like asking a lot of people is, if you could go back in time and talk to that, young knucklehead Vince now, as the person you are today, what would you tell him?
Oh man, it's tough to change anything. I'd say get ready for a long ride, man. I've been very blessed in having this crazy, fulfilling, and many different curves till I got to this point. You know what I mean? And I think if I change anything, it'll ruin the outcome of where I'm at now. Mm-hmm. And so it would just say, hold on for a long journey, man. And, and probably message that girl sooner. Message my wife a little sooner.
There you go. Yeah. Get that positivity in your life.
Yeah, she's been the rock in my life. That's been the push. And I'll be straight up. When I met her, it felt like everything in my life fell into place, but not only just life did, how I believed in myself. And so my wife, she genuinely has made me believe in myself again when I didn't. And since her, I'm telling you, none of this would have been possible. I never would have believed I could write a book, never thought I could be on TV, never thought I could be a writer of a television show, never thought any of it was possible. And just the power of one woman who allowed me to believe in myself again, man, changed everything.
I love that testament. Awesome. That's awesome. It is. Dude, well, Borderline comes out November 14th. You guys listening, you can head on over to Vince's page or Google it, or you can head over to us and pre-order it. Highly recommend it. Amazing book. I was really appreciative they were able to get that advanced reader copy and read it. And please, consider us for your next book when it comes out. We'd love to take a look at it and talk to you about it, because this conversation has honestly been an awesome conversation for me. Eye-opening, fresh perspective. I really love the resiliency stuff that you were talking about as well. I think that's a totally different approach, the right approach, I feel like. And so yeah, we'll post it again. It's a permanent spot on our Instagram page. The highlight, you can find Vince's book, Borderline. And yeah, Vince, is there anything else you want to leave us with before we head out here for tonight?
No, man, I just appreciate it. You know, we're doing our best to make this a New York Times best-selling book, because I think people need to read it. And this book, if anything, it's just the foundation of the immigration conversation. So if you really want to understand it, you need to understand what the career field of the Border Patrol does first, before you can try to open or peel back the layers of this onion. So thank you for your guys' time, man, and thank you for the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, guys, we're going to head out for tonight, but thank you again for listening to another episode of I Came With Fire podcast, and we're out of here.
What's going on, Fire fans? I Came With Fire podcast is sponsored by Red Clover Coffee and Sheep's Clothing, LLC. Red Clover Coffee is a veteran-owned company with small batch roasted coffees, and they just happen to donate to some pretty awesome charities. Whether you're into specialty flavored coffees, single source coffees, or having a really cool coffee mug and some badass slaps, Red Clover has you covered. You can order ground, whole bean, or even coffee pods and get it all at 10% off your entire purchase using coupon code CAMEWITHFIRE. Again, that's 10% off your entire purchase using our coupon code CAMEWITHFIRE. I personally love their Blueberry Invasion and African Roast. That Blueberry Invasion hits the spot. Head over and get yourself some awesome coffee and support us by supporting our sponsor. I Came With Fire podcast is also sponsored by Sheep's Clothing, LLC. Sheep's Clothing, LLC is a unifying banner for all violent arts, disciplines, professions, and survivors of violent circumstances. Redefine violence. Both Zach and I being survivors of violent circumstances and LEOs in the military, we are especially excited to be able to offer you 10% off your entire purchase with coupon code FIRE10 at checkout. Whether you're looking for an awesome t-shirt, hats, slaps, flags, or MMA gear, they've got you covered. Me personally, I love my snapback with the leather patch surrounded by God's flannel. If you know, you know. That's coupon code FIRE10, FIRE10 at checkout for 10% off your entire purchase. Thank you all so much for supporting this podcast, and if you should feel compelled, treat yourself by supporting our sponsors as well. They truly make a difference for us. Now let's make a difference for them. See you on the next show.